Alrighty, well, good afternoon. I guess good morning, everyone. We're used to doing our Zoom webinars at 12 o'clock. So welcome to Creating Organizational Capabilities for Innovation, powered by WeTech Alliance in partnership with Workplace Innovation Network for Canada and our friends at ENWIN Utilities. First, let me introduce myself. For those that don't know, I'm Yvonne Pilon, President and CEO of WeTech Alliance, and I will be responsible for moderating today's session. And I couldn't be more excited to welcome our rosters of speakers and guests to the virtual stage to talk about creating organizational capabilities and innovation and truly unlocking your organization's full potential. So you may be asking yourself, how did we get here today? Well, back in November 2022, WeTech Alliance, alongside Workplace Innovation Network for Canada, were selected among 17 national organizations to work with the Future Skills Center on research initiatives focused on better understanding quality of work in the Canadian context. So quality of work, what is that? It includes aspects such as salary, job security, professional growth, and important aspects of the labor market. And this research aimed at addressing key gaps in policy and practices related to quality of work issues. More specifically, this project, a collaboration between research partners and 4 leading Canadian organizations, aimed at analyzing and adapting research on workplace innovation for quality of work, mainly in Europe. The goal is to create a more innovative, engaging, and inclusive workplace in Canada. As our co-lead on this project, Adam Fry commented when we initiated this research, this work is critical in understanding how we can prepare and execute workplace innovation in the new workplace reality we face today. To learn more about the quality of work projects and their full project descriptions, our tech producer is going to add a link in the chat so you can read more about what is being done in this specific topic. And we do want to thank our friends at Future Skills and the Government of Ontario for supporting this project. So before I introduce one of our first speakers, a few housekeeping items. Many of you are not new to Zoom. So again, it's meant to be an engaging session. So feel free to comment through the chat throughout the presentations today. And following each presentation, we will be providing our guest an opportunity to address and ask any questions. You can use either the chat feature, we'll keep an eye on that, but if you can, move on over to the Q&A feature. And again, the upvoting opportunity is there. If you see a question that you're like, hey, I'd love to get that answered, please make sure to upvote that. And the good news is, if you don't want to take notes and you want to sit back and enjoy your coffee, lunch, this session is being recorded and we will make sure to share a complete copy of the video with you in the upcoming days in our wrapped email. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome to the virtual stage Dr. Thomas Carey, who is one of the co-founders of the Workplace Innovation Network of Canada and former professor and associate vice president at the University of Waterloo. Tom will be sharing a few remarks and introducing our speakers. So over to you, Dr. Carey.
Thanks very much, Yvonne, and thanks everybody for joining us today. The Workplace Innovation Network for Canada is a not-for-profit that we established in 2019 as a way to continue working on our collaborations between higher ed institutions and workplaces. So we share the common goal of trying to develop a more innovative workforce in Canada. And we felt there was no point higher ed and our industry partners working in our silos. Let's get together on this and try to move our country forward. The leaders internationally in employee-led workplace innovation come from Europe, and we're graced today having one of the leaders from Europe and an international expert. Professor Peter Totterdill was the co-founder of the European Union's initiative, the Workplace Innovation Research Network. Out of that, they developed the Workplace Innovation Europe as a not-for-profit, which Peter again was the co-founder. And so we're delighted to have Peter with us today. Peter and his colleague Rosemary Ayton are working with us as part of this project. So we have access to truly global leadership in this area, and we think there's a niche for Canada to develop it. So with that, Peter, I'll pass it over to you, speaking to us from Brussels.
Thank you very much, Tom. And it's a great pleasure to be talking to you today. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's just about to begin a lovely evening here in Brussels. What I'd like to do is to tell you a little bit about the origins of workplace innovation. And just going to share my screen now. Here we go. And really how we've translated that into a very, very practical set of resources, very much evidence-based resources to help companies become more resilient, to engage their employees more effectively, and to become more innovative to face the challenges of the 21st century. Um, so it really all starts here. Well, it doesn't really start here because actually there's been probably about 60 or 70 years worth of evidence to show that if you really engage and empower your employees effectively, it leads to win-win outcomes. It leads to improved outcomes for employees, better working lives, better healthy, more healthy working, but it also leads to a kind of a pervasive culture of innovation through the business and very much more. Back in 2000, the European Commission asked me and a consortium of 12 institutions, research institutions from 8 different countries in Europe, to review the evidence and to try and identify what works. And what they were looking for was that convergence between organizations which were really competitive, really successful in what they do, but at the same time were great places to work, places with good employee health and well-being, becoming really employers of choice. So we looked at about 100 different companies across Europe, all kinds of companies, large, small, manufacturing, services, across a range of different countries, a range of different national cultures, if you like. Very, very hard to summarize that, although we wrote quite a long report about it. But the kind of the soundbite from this is that it's really about introducing workplace practices that enable people to use and develop all of their knowledge, all of their skills, all of their experience and creativity in their day-to-day work. And that's how you get that kind of magic convergence between high performance and high quality working life. Now, since then, since 2002, when that report was published, of course, there's been a real burgeoning of research, of literature around the concept of workplace innovation. And if we were to summarize this, I mean, we could spend a whole day just looking at some of that evidence. But I think if we take an overview of what that evidence is saying, and by the way, not just from Europe, but there's been quite a lot of work in the US as well, and in South Korea, where I'm going in a month's time. And the findings are very, very much the same. If you compare like with like, if you compare companies organized on much more traditional command and control lines with those companies who are really buying into and adopting workplace innovation practices systematically, then you get between a 20 to 60% performance gain across a range of different indicators. And that can be productivity, that can be capacity for innovation, that can be health, well-being, retention, lots of different factors, but always coming back to that sort of win-win outcome. And just to give you a very, very fairly up-to-date sort of sample of some of that evidence, but I think this is a really important one. How much autonomy do you have in your job? And how much ability do you have to address new challenges and to learn at work, learn new skills, get new experience at work? Well, the answer is a bit depressing. If you look at that little green dot across the whole of Europe, then the figure is around 10%. But look where that sits within this axis. The vertical axis is about the performance, economic performance of the organization. The horizontal axis is about the well-being of the workforce. And what you can see is that where you get jobs which really are based on trust, really based on flexibility, agility, giving people the discretion to decide how they do their own work, then you get those win-win outcomes. Of course, at the far extreme, in the purple circle, that's where the kind of the command and control really shows itself to be lacking in both respects. Of course, a lot of companies on the journey, the ones in the blue dot, are showing that they're trying, they're doing some things right. But the trouble is of being on the journey is that there are a lot of antibodies, there are a lot of cultural factors within the company, a lot of other things which really stop you achieving those full benefits. Now, since again 2002, we've been working. The European Commission asked us to set up a network, as Tom said, the European Workplace Innovation Network, EWIN. If you look at EWIN, if you Google EWIN, you'll probably come across Malaysian gambling casino. It's not that one. It's a bit further down the list. But we're a consortium now who have activists, enthusiasts, ranging from public policy organizations, from government agencies, through to trade unions, employers organizations, and universities in most European countries. And they have really been working together. We've been building quite a movement in Europe to try and understand how we can promote workplace innovation at lots of different levels. And one of our tasks, I think, was very much to think about what makes for companies. It's recognizing that relationships with your employees, and by the way, that also extends to relationships with customers and suppliers as well, is a choice. It's something which actually should run through the whole DNA of the business. It's relevant to all sizes of organization. I'll come back to that in a minute. It's very much about employee involvement and empowerment, leading to those win-win outcomes. But critically, it's focused on very specific workplace practices grounded in evidence that we know lead to those outcomes. Excuse me. So our next task was to actually define for companies what worked in practice, to hold up a mirror to their existing practices and to help them to actually think about areas for change, for improvement. So again, we went back to that literature, we went back to those case studies, and it comes very, very neatly into 4 bundles of interdependent practices. So we're looking, as we've already said, about the discretion that people have at work, the extent to which they actually work in supportive, self-organizing teams that are responsible for planning and shaping their own work, and technologies that support that empowerment. It's about employee-driven innovation and improvement, the ability of people to take 2 steps back from work to bring their ideas to work. It's about working in more fluid, flatter organizations, where line managers are acting as coaches, as mentors, not micromanaging everything that people do. And it's about leaders who really get this, and to recognize that even strategic decisions are often better when they're listening to the tacit knowledge and experience and ideas of people throughout the organization. And it's the coming together of those 4 elements which creates, if you like, the alchemy of this 5th element about these win-win outcomes: enhanced innovation, performance, and working life. And I would say that when we're talking about things like culture and engagement, we have to see those as byproducts, or as products of those elements. They are not ends in themselves in that sense. Now, one of the ways that we work with companies, and I think this is something that we've thought about and worked on for a long, long time, is we're not telling companies what to do. We're not giving them a blueprint. What we're doing is to create something new. We're blending, if you like, the tacit knowledge, the experience of people from companies about their own organization, about their own workplaces, about their own working lives, with our, if you like, more generic knowledge about what works in practice. So our way of working is very much to focus on change leaders within companies. Now, they can be quite senior. Chap on the far right, he's the finance director of a big research organization in Scotland. There are a couple of other people who are managing directors in that group. But the guy in the black here on the left, that's Bob. He left school when he was 15 or 16. He's a machinist in a high precision engineering company. But he was the person in the company who really got this. He was the one who understood that actually engaging the ideas of people in that company would help them to resolve a lot of the problems that they actually had. So change leaders, as you can see, can come in all shapes and sizes within companies. And one of our tasks as a starting point is to give those people actually the knowledge, the skills, and the practical resources they need to be effective change leaders within their own organizations. So blending a lot of face-to-face stuff now that the lockdown has gone with e-learning, a lot of peer-to-peer learning and interaction, as well as very much part of, I think, the way that we work. And coming back to this point that this works for all kinds of organizations, this is just the people you saw in the previous photograph. They come from this particular group of companies. And as you can see, they're very, very diverse from quite a large international pharmaceutical company, family-owned engineering services, social care, 2,000 people across Scotland, packaging, building. It really works in different places. And each one of these companies became involved in workplace innovation precisely because they recognized that there was more that they could be doing with their people, that they wanted their people to bring, if you like, their whole selves to work, their ideas, their engagement, their commitment, as well as just coming to do their day-to-day functional tasks. And each one of those companies achieved really substantial gains. Now, what I'd like to do is to just share experience from one company, Boothwell. It's was a family-owned company, now part of a bigger group. When we first started to work with them, they employed about 160 people, and now about 350 through growth and takeovers. Specialized engineering services to the power industry, pharmaceuticals, food industry, really across the board. And here's Martin. He inherited the company from his father. And on the right, Amy, who was their marketing and communications, still is their marketing and communications manager. And again, our starting point with Booth Welsh was with the fifth element, was with these four elements, getting them to think about what they were doing well, but also what could be improved. So we took Amy and her colleague Gordon, who was a senior engineer within the company, through the e-learning program, again, giving them that knowledge, giving them some practical tools and resources, but also personal coaching and support, making sure they really had a mandate from Martin as the MD to make change happen. And of course, they developed the knowledge, they developed skills, but we also worked on the emotional intelligence side as well. I'll come to that in just a moment. The next thing was actually, what are we going to measure? How are we going to know where the key areas for action are? So the Workplace Innovation Diagnostic measures employees' experience of 49 different workplace practices, all of whom are represented within that bundle of four elements that you saw a moment ago. We get pretty good response rates from people across the organization, but critically, it's very, very actionable. As I say, we're not asking too many abstract questions about how do you feel about work, more very, very concrete areas of people's day-to-day experience. And here we are. This is not for that particular company, but this is just a sort of a demonstration results sheet, which shows on the one hand the actual specific bundles of workplace practices in the left-hand column, and of course it's broken down as you go down the sheet into quite detailed practices, and then along the top we're breaking it down both into particular occupational categories, but also to locations, to departments, to teams, and so on. So it gives you a very, very tangible, very actionable area. So you can see in this sample, there are a lot of reds, clearly something where they need to act on. There are also some greens. There are some areas of good practice that they can celebrate, but maybe actually also to share internally about what works. Now, for Booth Welsh, the results came as a bit of a shock. They always prided themselves as still having that family company ethos, but actually as they'd grown, a distance had opened up between the senior team and the rest of the workforce. And the first thing that jumped out at us from the diagnostic results is that the workforce didn't feel as though they had a part to play in business strategy. That was something that bosses upstairs did, nothing to do with them, which actually really worried Martin and the senior team, because they knew that they were going to have to go through a period of innovation, embracing digital technologies, facing a lot more competition globally. So getting a workforce that really understands the direction of the company is pretty critical. So the first thing we did is we took a cross-section of people from the company away to a nice seaside hotel for a couple of days and got them to think about what the company would look like in 3 to 4 years' time if it was really successful, if it was really, had transformed itself. And then we thought, how do you actually get there? In that journey of that next few years, what were the key issues that they had to address? And so that group really, and the principles of that session were very much about listening to the force of the better argument, whoever it comes from, not listening necessarily just to the senior team. And they came up with these 4 pillars, as they called them. Now, nothing innovative about those pillars necessarily, except that each pillar was a kind of a place framework on which everybody across the workforce could get involved. So each one of these squares to the right of the pillars, they are areas where they set up task groups, where they set up discussion forums, where they set up sort of online resources, where people across the organization could bring their ideas. Hey, I really want to work on continuous improvement. I know that in my team, we could actually do so much more to improve what we do. Or I want to investigate the possibility for digital technologies. We then moved on. This is it. This is their strategy 4 years later. They've moved such a long way into really wanting to become a more agile and more flatter organization, one which puts innovation very much at the core of what they do, but also recognizing as well about their social purpose, recognizing that although they're a for-profit company, they work and exist within a community. So they're investing in schools. They're really trying to bring on the next generation of engineers from an early age. They're looking very much at their environmental impact as well. So big change in culture for the company, broadening their horizons. But the second thing that I actually came across from the diagnostic was that people couldn't bring their ideas to work. The company prided itself on being open to suggestions, and yet the messages that people were getting across the organization was, don't trouble us, we've got targets to meet, hey, we've got this deadline by the end of the week. So few opportunities to really contribute. Now, the first thing was about physical space. Let's actually make a cafe. Instead of, people having a kettle in the corner of the office and making their own instant coffee, let's actually produce really, really good coffee that make everybody come to the same place to have it. And here are 2 guys from different departments who wouldn't necessarily talk to each other, but who are, are now starting a conversation. And that might lead to lots of new ideas. And then creating labs, places where people could play with ideas, virtual reality, an area where people can just come, with this sort of soft furnishings, lots of spaces, paper, screens, to just play with ideas, to have conversations that otherwise wouldn't happen. And what came from that was a real understanding of the potential of digital technologies, not just for changing their own internal practices, but how they could offer a whole new level of services to their clients. Now, in the past, you talk about digitalization to people in Booth Welsh. They were frightened. They thought this is going to take our jobs, or this is going to really change things horribly. But in fact, the ideas for digitalization, for Industry 4.0, as we're calling it, actually came very much from the people themselves, from the front line. People may be having ideas that they'd harbored for a long time. And similarly, how can we use digital technologies? We're working with the power industry, we're working with the oil and gas industry. How can we use digital technologies to minimize their environmental impact, and so on. So lots of things came from that. But then you had these divisions within the company. So mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, many of the projects they were working on actually meant that you had to have real integration between them, but they weren't talking to each other. And a lot of the problems, the quality issues, the bottlenecks took place, because of those sorts of silos. So let's do a bit of very, very simple process mapping. And I'd love to keep process mapping simple. So post-it notes, lots of pens, lots of opportunity to start discussions that wouldn't happen, thinking about actually the great things we're doing, but also what gets in the way of us doing a good job, what gets in the way of us providing a really good seamless service to the customer. And it's amazing what you can do in a half a day with lots of post-it notes. Then finally, about like a real team working. And again, team working is one of those words, isn't it? Everybody works in the team, but actually real teams, are where people really have that sense of mutual support, of collaboration, and so on. So we work very hard to actually get people really thinking about how they could work better together, but also how they could take pressure off the team, away from their line managers, and be more responsible for themselves for day-to-day decision making, which means that line managers, instead of micromanaging decisions that other people would well make, would actually be released to do what managers should be doing. Quite a challenge. Now, this is a big culture change, and particularly when we're talking about managers trusting, empowering people. Sorry, I've gone on too far. Then it really is a change. Now, Martin, the MD, had to go through quite a remarkable journey himself on this, from inheriting very much a paternalistic command and control sort of company to actually realizing he had to let go. Was quite a big change, and not just for him, for other members of the senior team as well. So emotional intelligence was something which we really worked with them on. People with high self-esteem are more likely to trust others, and in organizations are more likely to empower others. People with low self-esteem are more likely to mistrust others and work in a very much micromanaging, very much command and control kind of way. And we've really, I think, worked with a lot of those managers now to make a real difference. By the way, there was one guy, very senior guy in the company, couldn't cope with it, any of that. Absolutely fine. He had every chance, but he'd gone. So, what are the results? Well, immediately we got at least 50% of those people across the organizations, instead of saying strategy is nothing to do with us, they immediately started to contribute in a task group, a working group, contributing their ideas to the direction the business should be going. Lots of ideas coming up for improving the service to customers, to developing new products. People actively engaged in redesigning the structure, flattening the organizational structure. Again, really releasing senior managers, senior team managers. And now Martin's objective is not to be involved in the day-to-day running of the business as MD, really to be driving the next frontiers, which he could never have done before. And by the way, we've repeated the diagnostic survey several times, this about to do it a fourth time. Every year we're getting, lots of those reds, lots of those ambers turn into greens. So it's very much about taking a systematic approach to looking at the organization, looking at the enablers of empowerment, looking at the things which actually either get in the way or enhance people's performance, people's well-being, and so on, and seeing them as a system of mutually interdependent parts. So thank you very much. Hope that's been helpful, but very, very happy to answer questions.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Dr. Totterdill. That was fantastic. And I know we're going to be hearing from our friends at ENWIN Utilities who are living and breathing workplace innovation and have been doing so for many years now. So we will take questions. I know we've got one already in the Q&A, so please feel free to share any questions. So I'll pass on the first question here. So it's a few sentences long. So I find managers are sometimes afraid to open discussion within teams when it feels like we don't have solutions. Like managers think they don't have any new money or new staff, and how can our problems be improved? And opening a discussion will just lead to complaining, bad feelings, and no resolutions. Although actually that often is not what happens. Often the team can find new improvements that help even without new money. What do you think?
Great question. I'd throw the question back. Why would you assume that managers always have to have the answers? Yeah, I mean, we worked with a guy a long time ago who said, well, if there was a better way of doing things, don't you think I would have thought about it already? But the point is that actually, the best solutions come from diversity of experience, diversity of backgrounds, and very often through debate, through open debate. And we always say to companies, actually don't come with solutions, come with problems, and let's build a shared solution together. And the whole point about that is that first you probably get better solutions because, and I can give you loads and loads of examples, but also, of course, you get buy-in. You don't have to sell the solution, change the idea to people because they're part of it, they're in it. So, yeah, I mean, but it comes back to emotional intelligence as well. Again, I think it requires a degree of self-esteem and confidence to actually go to your team and say, I don't have the answer to this. How can we work on it together? We know we haven't got any money, but there must be a better way of resolving this.
Great. I'll take one question that came in upon registration and is, what resources would an employer require to create and sustain its organizational capability for workplace innovation?
I think the starting point is always with reflection, with I think diagnosis, but I think ultimately it's about opening the discussion with your workforce. Sometimes that's difficult for people to do. I think when there is a culture, perhaps of, as we saw in Booth Welch, of remoteness from the senior team, sometimes bringing in an external facilitator to start that discussion, to build trust, to build openness, I think is helpful. But in the end, I think the company itself has to own the process that it's starting. And, I think it doesn't take much to unleash a lot of ideas, a lot of enthusiasm from change. People very often have conversations with each other over coffee, after work, whatever, that they somehow never bring into the workplace formally. And that can often be the biggest wasted resource for any organization. Does that answer the question?
I think that does a great job. And Dr. Totterdill, if you're able to share your slides with us, we'd gladly share them. And I know we've added a link in there to some of the great resources on your website. So thank you so much for taking the time today and joining us from Brussels. And we look forward to continuing to see the research and the findings that are happening in Europe, and obviously how they're connecting back here in North America. So with that, we'll thank Dr. Totterdill for his presentation, and we'll pass it over to Dr. Carey to introduce our next group of speakers from ENWIN Utilities.
Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, Peter, for that very effective summary of the research insights and the exemplary practices that are emerging from your work, especially in Europe. The project that we're working on with WeTech is how do we apply those kinds of insights to accelerate developments in Canada to build a more innovative workforce. Peter mentioned none of this is off the shelf. Each organization has its own culture and its own issues. We think there are also differences in our Canadian context from several of the contexts in Europe. So we're working now with 7 organizations across the country who have come with a particular problem, and we have tried to share with them some of those insights that we've learned from Peter and his colleagues and elsewhere. So ENWIN Utilities is one of those partners, and Barry and Rosanna are going to walk through for ENWIN what Peter just walked through in his example of Booth Welch Engineering Services up in Scotland. We will send you, as a follow-up to this session, a list of the problems being tackled by those other organizations and an invitation to bring your issues to us so that we can see how some of the insights from Europe might apply. Our speakers from ENWIN are Rosana Kemsley, who is the manager of Human Resource Services, and Barry Leavitt, who is the director of operations and innovation. And I know he's quite proud of getting that and innovation into his job title. Barry and Rosanna are also proud graduates of the University of Windsor, as am I. And I'm going to hand it over to them now.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Peter, too, because that was so interesting, your work to hear about. So thanks for that. I'm going to right off thank you for inviting us to the event. The idea of speaking to something focused on fostering innovation and building organizational culture of innovation is exciting to both Barry and I. We hope today in short order to walk you through our journey at ENWIN, our story that began with a pretty strong desire to tap into the employee population and to open an opportunity for them to create new and optimal solution paths. So at its core, it was an opportunity to rethink how we solve problems and to empower and engage our employees. It has been, and you'll see, a winding path that we've been on, and it continues to change and evolve. Barry, a little bit later, we'll talk about where we are today, and I'll talk a little bit about how we got here. But we hope that you take away some valuable insights from our story and that they help you on your workplace innovation journey. So a little bit about who we are and where we are for those that don't know. We are the local distribution company for hydro for the city of Windsor. Also, we produce and distribute clean drinking water for the city of Windsor and into Tecumseh and LaSalle as well. Windsor is home to a population of in and around 300,000, dominated by the automotive sector, for those that don't know. And yes, home to the University of Windsor with around 15,000 students, and St. Clair College with around 10,000 students. We are municipally owned and have around 90,000 customers. Our employee base at ENWIN is 300. So we are 300 employees strong, 200 of which, or in and around 200 of which, are unionized employees, and 100 or so are non-union and management leadership staff. We also have field workers in that unionized group who are literally working out in the field, maintaining the hydro and water infrastructure and producing clean drinking water. So just to give you a snapshot, that's who we are here at ENWIN and where we're situated. So this is our story. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can. I feel like I could talk for hours on this subject. So in 2018, we started with a focus on building a culture that promotes innovative problem solving. And day one, Barry will attest to this, was a very large, really messy whiteboard brainstorming session. The brainstorm quickly became the launchpad for an enthusiastic pitch to executive to host, which is kind of funny to talk about now, a one-day innovation day sprint. How we thought we might do this in a day is now beyond me. We then had a really chance meeting with WeTech that furthered the conversation and refined that proposal to executive to include a year-long engagement with WeTech and an annual innovation cycle, with then the potential to engage maybe even more staff than we would have in a one-day event over a longer horizon. The executive enthusiastically supported the proposal, and we had a lot of autonomy and we were on our way. So Barry and I, with Adam's support from WeTech, invested a significant number of hours to learning human-centered design thinking methodology. We took design thinking courses, read books on workplace innovation, watched webinars, and we soaked in as much knowledge as we could to build the corporate program. And we often say we were only about 2 steps ahead of the cohort that we were leading. And so that was a really interesting, fun learning experience. We had a significant handful of people who chose to answer our call to action and participate. So we built out training, hosted sessions to engage those, what we called, I think we called them catalysts then, we're calling them innovators now. We had scrums, help them work through those steps of design thinking, basically giving them our knowledge as quickly as we could absorb it. And we kept the executive up to date on our status as we move through. In 2019, our first cycle of innovation, we called it ENnovation. So that was our branding, ENWIN and innovation. So I haven't misspelled innovation on the slides. And we produced some high employee engagement, ultimately 7 pitches that were accepted by the executive team, and they made it onto our strategic roadmap. Sorry, my lights are out here. In 2020 and 21, we continued with a second cycle. It produced 6 pitches that were accepted by the executive. In 2022, we had a little bit of a shift. We started to reevaluate the program in the context of the current environment. And a lot of what Peter said really resonated. We decided that it might be time to find a way to inject it into the fabric of the organization versus programming, in hopes that it becomes sustainable. So that was one of the key goals, and it becomes part of who we are at ENWIN, part of our DNA. So more research, more reading, more webinars, and we arrived at quite an appreciation for systems thinking, for the interrelationships among systems in an organization, how we might leverage those in order to really influence change and ensure sustainability of a culture of innovation. So we determined that what we think we need to do, and I say we think because we are currently in the process of walking through this today, we determined we would need to embed it into the established systems and processes of the institution. And this is where we're today. And Barry will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But we started to embed innovation into a system that we have in our organization. So you'd have to assess your own culture that we've come to rely on. And that was our performance management or objective setting annual program. So we've worked with a group of innovators who have selected the annual goal of applying design thinking to an area that they hope to make better. We're guiding them through the empathizing stages, understanding their problem, identifying it, and identifying whether it's something worth solving. And fast forward, April 11th, coming up shortly, is our ideation day. And we have 7 innovators that will host 3 ideation sessions each to find optimal solutions, hopefully, to their problem. Some will validate their solutions as well if they're further along the path. It's an exciting, engaging day for those focused on finding a solution to their problem and those offering their ideas. So the entire organization is invited, to the capacity that we can hold. So that's kind of our story. This next slide, if I can get the video to work properly, will show you a little bit about what Ideation Day looked like in 2019. So this was our original Ideation Day. So somebody yell at me if this doesn't work appropriately, but let's give it a shot.
It interested me having the opportunity to get together with people in the organization that are dedicated to solving problems.
I chose to take part as an innovator because I like out-of-the-box thinking. I want to be a part of a grassroots operation that brings new ideas forth to the company.
I really wanted to be able to give new ideas, hear what ideas were on the board and on the table, and I guess just really learn.
There were groups of catalysts that were responsible for presenting problems and issues that they'd already looked at and done some survey work on, consulted with people in the organization and chatted with. And we were there basically to help provide solutions, sort of a mental whiteboarding exercise.
It was a discussion, and in some cases they knew what their solution was and they were looking to see, is this our best approach? Is this something that would work?
The catalysts themselves had already done a lot of the groundwork and laid a lot of the foundation. They were able to really clearly articulate the problems, and then we could focus on just tossing out potential solutions and whatnot.
We have expertise right here in our own company, and people with a lot of ideas that maybe haven't been able to express that, but Innovation Day offered that. And I think we constantly have to be evolving and thinking outside the box and bring all of our ideas collectively together.
When you bring people together from different corners of the business and different positions, it didn't matter what position you served in the organization, you were free to throw out those ideas. And when we can bring all of the different folks together that have ideas to contribute to that, I think it creates a better product. It's going to create happier customers. It's nothing but positive.
Coming together collectively to just brainstorm what the Catalyst had to offer. It was essential, I think, that everyone from different backgrounds did come together.
We all felt really invigorated. Like it was a great experience.
Every time I watch that video, I become extremely proud of who we are at ENWIN. Okay. So from our learnings over the last couple of years, we put together, there's probably more. Here are some lessons learned, what we believe to be the pillars of success from our first couple of rounds, some of the things that we are considering going forward. So I'm sure these are probably a little bit obvious. Buy-in from the leadership team, from the executive, was critical. The executive gave the leads the trust and the autonomy to not only go ahead with the program, but learn along the way. So we had the ability to learn and develop a program of innovation and support it openly through all staff communication. So that meant our CEO was communicating through all staff communications about their support of the program. Presence at events, open recognition of the work that we were doing. So that level of buy-in we think is critical. Enthusiastic believers to lead. So something Peter said was giving the focus on the change leaders, right? It was Barry and I to start with. It could have been anybody in this organization, realistically, as you saw from one of the photos that Peter had up, but carefully assigning this work to those who are really passionate about it and willing to do the hard work to learn it, I think is important. It's not a requirement that it sits in HR or in project management, but it does need to be led by individuals who believe that there is a better way, that individuals that are open-minded enough to try and have the capacity and enthusiasm for the amount of work that does possibly go into building it out. And they need to embody the human-centered approach and practice what they preach, right? So we thought that was critical. Psychological safety. So the culture needing to be inclusive or open, at least, to learning about how to be more inclusive. A culture that needs to learn how to explore ideas that are not traditional and encourage the diversity of thought and not shut it down is important. And leadership needs to get sometimes out of their comfort zone, probably, and accept that they might not know the best solution to every problem, but that their people might. So the organization must have the capacity for failure, learning, and growth. Fun was another key one. So we learned not to underestimate that work can be fun, and in the right environment where people feel valued for their ideas, are encouraged to team up to solve problems, and aren't shamed when they fail, work can be fun. And lastly, and I think probably maybe most importantly, is integrated. So this concept of less programming, although it could start that way, and more embedded in the structures, systems, processes that exist today, I think is what makes it stick. So those are our learnings. Ultimately, the evolution to a culture of innovation, we think, is centered around three things: a transition from program-based to culture-based so that it sticks. Building design thinking and innovation into an existing performance management ecosystem is what we decided to do, but it could be a number of other systems that are part of the organization. And Barry will talk about this. We've started to incentivize the right solution over the immediate solution, and away from the flavor of the week idea. You have existing systems today, all organizations do. They probably work well. They can support a culture of innovation. And so it's really the intersection of all of these systems into something that supports a culture that can be creative, problem solvers, an innovative culture. So with that, I think I'm flipping it over to you, Barry, for the next slide.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Rosanna. And I'm with you. Every time I watch that video, it reminds me of the amount of energy that lifting that program up created, and people, years later still talk about it and they look forward to it. We've done it twice, and we plan to do it again on April 11th with this next cohort. So I think the emphasis is that innovation, to be sustainable, really, it can't be a program. You can't have people who have to hold it up and encourage people to participate. It has to be integrated into our way of thinking or solving problems and collaborating on solutions. And I think Peter nailed it when we talked about the emotional intelligence around just being confident enough to go out there and try, and not be too hung up on the success. When we started this in 2019, I still remember the conversation where we said, we promise you nothing other than an engaged workforce. And if we get some great ideas out of it, then that's just bonus. It's really about getting the employees to feel comfortable about coming forward with what they have to offer. And it's been a tremendous success, no matter how you measure it. And I'm sure we could measure it, but a number of initiatives made it into the strategic plan. So that should be proof enough that you can make it work. But we also recognize that we couldn't run it as a program going forward. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is how we've transitioned it. We did actually use some human-centered design thinking to transition from a program-based implementation to a cultural-based implementation. So we looked at the problem. We talked to a lot of people. We took the feedback from the first couple of cycles of innovation at ENWIN, talked with the executives a little bit, and we came up with what we believe to be a transitional solution to get it into our fabric, as we talked about. So it's we live it every day. We're constantly asking, do we have the right problem? And because we can't move to solution mode until we're confident that we're addressing the right problem. So you can just, yeah, thanks. So 2023 is actually a transitional year for us. There is a pretty full playbook already on the docket, and that's signified by the blue in the graphic there. Most of our resources are already focused on delivering what's in front of us today. So projects that are already clearly defined, they're in midstream. We have some pretty firm commitments to deliver on them, and they address our current strategic initiatives, leaving a little bit of bandwidth to deal with any emergent challenges that typically most businesses have to face. And where our focus for integrating it into our culture was to focus on the green portion of the graphic, where there are a number of people who may not have existing commitments to the established initiatives, but are still tasked with exploring new areas. We wanted to harvest the energy, the human capital that were focused on the next round of problems and move them through a more structured approach. In the past, we would typically unleash this bandwidth, and they would define and implement all in one breath, and we often didn't get solutions, good solutions to the problems that we needed to solve. And it created a form of piling on, just way too much work to do, and not always convinced that everything that we were doing was returning to the strategic plan of the company. So in that green space, what we're doing in 2023, building on the pillars of our existing performance management, human staff management practices, is that every area of interest, which we're really calling tomorrow's challenges, is under this umbrella that I keep saying, and I'll keep saying it until I get 80% of the company saying it: the right problem with the right solution at the right time. So there's three pieces of that are important to me. The first being the right problem. So everyone has a laundry list of things that they could cite that they feel that we could do better. And without a doubt, they're probably right. But if you start to go through the human-centered design thinking process, if you go through the empathize phase properly and the define phase properly, it will get morphed into a more realistic perspective on what the true problem is and how it can then be leveraged into a solution that will help the organization move forward. So we've taken all of these, we've triaged out all of the work that was not directly related to our 2023 corporate strategic plan, and we've asked them to move through a very structured design thinking process over a 6-month period to make sure that we've got the right problem with the right solution. And then, of course, at the end of this exercise, there is a proposal to management to say we should solve this with a recommendation on when. So is it an emergent problem? Is it something that we can prioritize into a future year? How urgent is it that we do this? So it allows us to manage the breadth of our strategic initiatives to fit within the human capital we have to deploy against these particular problems. So what does it look like at ENWIN during this transition year? We have a support network of innovation leads, which are myself, Rosana. There's 2 other alumni from the previous innovation cycles that are also helping us. And we're supporting this 6-month innovation transition sprint to help them move through, train them on design thinking, support them as they struggle with what do you really mean by this, and opening doors that they may not already have open themselves within the company. And we've used the existing personal objective setting process. So every employee has a set of objectives that they are going to deliver on this year. But what we've shifted the focus was from implementation to exploration. So they're very prescriptive milestones, and that we're moving everyone through as a cohort with the the old military mantra, leave no one behind. So as a cohort, you're helping your fellow employee move through their journey at the same time that you're moving through your own, through the empathize phase, the define phase, the ideation phase, etc. So it's very much moving as a group, a self-help group as we do this, but it is linked to the performance management system, and they'll be evaluated at the end of the year, not on the value of their findings, but on the adherence to the process and the growth that they achieved by going through it. To support that, we built a very simplistic workbook to say, here's the steps, here's the information you need to collect, here's where you jot your notes. So it gave them a fairly basic toolkit to house all of their activity. We also inject energy into the process with weekly, bi-weekly scrums, bring people together for 30 minutes, say, where are you at, where are you stuck, how can we help, how can your fellow members of the cohort help? And we'll have our big innovation day, which is the high energy day coming up on the 11th. We also have some process improvement working groups, people who are focused on business process improvement. They come together to talk about their I guess barriers and their successes, and help each other through that. But we also have our comms team who's helping us with communication splashes to keep it front of mind. But really, to me, we celebrate the wins, the surprises, the journey, and we're incentivizing adherence to the process, to our ability to integrate innovation into our culture. And it's not just the project, although it's very important to business performance. We believe that if you have good processes and you have good people, the results will come, the projects will prove out, and we'll only be working on those things that offer high value to the corporation. So where are we today? As I said, we've triaged all of the ideas that were at the concept stage, and we're moving through a 6-month design thinking sprint. We call it a sprint. 6 months is still a long time, but people have operational responsibilities day to day as well. So business change isn't their primary reason for being. It is one of the other things we ask them to do. So 6 months is still pretty much a high pressure environment for them. Again, with the workbook, the training, and the scrums. We're doing the Innovation Day, as I said, and that at the end of June, we'll be bringing all of the business case-based proposals to the executives. And I won't be surprised if some of them have a recommendation to do nothing, that we thought it was a problem, we explored it, and we found out that to our surprise that it isn't worth solving, or it has a very low value return. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a huge win for the company, because in past cycles or past approaches, we would have just implemented it because we thought it was a good idea. So we would have wasted human capital, we would have consumed very valuable resources to do something that had low value. So we're next. We've very much believed that we're part of the build, measure, learn model. We have to keep learning. We're hoping that we can tap into Peter's workplace diagnostic with Tom's support and get a better roadmap and insight. Hold the mirror up, I think someone said, and see where we really can focus our effort on building this culture. We're certainly going to talk to the employees who are going through this and get their feedback, and that we will refine it for 2024 and keep moving forward. So it's never a one and done. You always have to nurture these things and improve them with the focus on what the human experience is and the value of the effort. So a quick recap in the interest of time. You need visible C-suite support, and we're very fortunate to have it. They believe that an environment with an integration of innovation into our culture will produce better results. They've given us the latitude during this transition year of 2023 to explore how that might work, and then get ready to lock it down in 2024 for the next cycle. And we aren't building anything new. We're using the existing business processes that we've grown up with and we trust. Our performance management system being one of them, the mentor mandate being another. And we've got a very passionate and knowledgeable support team. Rosanna and I are head cheerleaders, and mostly because we absolutely believe this is the future of problem solving in business. If you want to be a leader in your sector, you have to be at the front of this, and you have to unleash the power of your employees, and of course never stop improving. So that's our story. That's where we're at today. That's what we've accomplished, and if anyone has any questions, we'd be more than happy to entertain them.
So we do have some questions. So for those, I know we're a little bit behind schedule, but hopefully, again, this will be recorded. So if you have to pop off, make sure to check out the recording. So I can attest to Barry and Rosanna, the energy that was in the room in 2019 with the Innovation Days happening here at our offices at Epicenter, and also echoing how important it's been and to see your success and growth. And we were happy to play a small role in innovation. And again, you are very big cheerleaders, and that is so important. So Peter did answer one of these questions, but I think it'd be important for any companies still on the line with us right now. How do you measure the effectiveness of your innovation strategy, and what metrics do you see or do you use to evaluate its success? Any comments on that? And I know Peter has answered it and basically just said, it depends on the company. Some of them are employee-driven innovation and improvements, but from an ENWIN perspective, anything to chime in on that?
Well, we did go into it with the very traditional management measurement proposal. So we had, I think, half a dozen metrics that we were going to measure. Some of them being employee engagement. Some were very classic and probably nearsighted, like how many ideas did we generate and things like that. But I think that the true measure is the value that the senior team has experienced of having a frontline employee stand in front of them and pitch an idea about how to onboard an employee better, as an example. And that truly was one of the ideas that came through the innovation cycle, was the onboarding experience of a new employee isn't the greatest. And so how do you measure the value of that idea and the value of giving that employee a voice, and the value of actually implementing change that every employee that came after that person has now had a better experience, and they now view ENWIN with a better light. So tough to measure these things, but I can't imagine not doing it and not trying to continue to make the employee experience better. So I don't know as I've answered or contributed too much there, other than you just have to believe that there is value here, and it will come through in the traditional business measures of EBITDA and however else you want to measure your business.
All right, we'll take one last quick question. So how do you balance the need for innovation with the need of stability and consistency in your organization operations?
I'll chime in. I don't see a difference. Stability in an organization is really about repeatable results, and I think that it's about how you want to get to repeatable results, how you want to get to improved performance. And so we can continue to do it in a very traditional way where, the first one to solution wins, or we could do it in a more I guess thoughtful way as to whoever has the right problem with the right solution at the right time will ultimately produce a better outcome, not only for the business but for the employee. And then that just feeds back on itself with the a more engaged employee is going to continue to contribute better to the business day in and day out. So it does feed on itself from my perspective.
Thank you, Barry. And Peter put in a really good point, is innovation doesn't always need to be disruptive, right? This can be a consistent incremental innovation, right? So it's not always a full disruption. So some really good points there. So thank you, Barry and Rosana, for sharing the ENWIN story. And again, it's been exciting to see how things have moved since 2019. So congratulations. And with that, we're going to wrap up. It's been a pleasure. So we want to thank you all for the great questions, as well as to our speakers, our guests, the researchers that are working on this project. And really a lot of people played a role in getting us here today. So with that, again, just a big thank you. And I'll just pass it to Dr. Carey to share any closing remarks, and then I'll wrap up with just some last minute items, just on what you'll expect in your inboxes. So Dr. Carey, if you have any comments, feel free to share them.
Sure. Well, I want to thank again Peter, Rosana, and Barry for sharing with us. The issue that Barry mentioned earlier about some of our teams having a success by deciding not to pursue a particular initiative. We've had a number of our partners ask us to collate some of the research on that. How can we be sure those people feel that they've engaged in a successful way? So that's one of the topics on which we want to follow up with Barry and Rosana and others. So we welcome people bringing those concerns to us so that we can continue to bring in the best ideas from around the world to help us here in Canada. Thanks, Yvonne, to you as well for all the support.
we're happy to play a small role. So again, just to conclude, you will get an email. And thank you, Dr. Totterdill. You've already sent your slides over. Rosanna and Barry, if you're willing to share your slides, we can add that to the wrapped email if you'd like. And again, you did see a poll pop up here at WeTech. We like to make sure that all the events we're doing provide value to you. So thank you in advance if you've already completed that poll. And again, this concludes creating organizational capability for innovation. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to our guests and to our tech producer here at WeTech, Emily Roback, for helping us out. And of course, the Future Skills and Government of Canada for supporting this research project. So until we meet again, keep on innovating and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
you.